Yo, what's going on, guys? Room Given here, back in another video. Today's episode, taking a look at Ret Paladin in pre-patch, kind of what's going on with him. Taking a look at like the rotational stuff and just kind of what's changed with Ret Paladin. So first, let's talk about some of like the core gameplay changes. So first thing we're going to talk about here is Execution Sentence. So Execution Sentence has been reworked and it now combines our Final Reckoning and the old Execution Sentence. So this is going to give us access to funnel damage. So your main target's going to take a lot of holy damage, and then nearby enemies is basically going to splash damage and partially funnels back to the primary target. So this is going to give us a lot of burst AoE and a decent amount of single target damage, kind of all packed into one ability. Up next is the new Divine Hammer. So basically, Divine Hammer is no longer an active button and now automatically triggers when you use Divine Toll. So it's basically just passive damage, essentially. So Divine Toll summons Divine Hammers that spin around you for 8 seconds. And again, the Divine Toll is what procs the Divine Hammers. And next we have our Avenging Wrath. So Avenging Wrath is just a baseline 1-minute cooldown now. Now, Avenging Wrath does have a couple of modifiers with it as well. So one of the ones I'm going to talk about here is going to be our Crusade. Really laggy here. Okay, Crusade. So Avenging Wrath now grants you 2% haste. Each holy power spent during Avenging Wrath increases haste up to 2% to a max at 20%. Another thing that changed is with our Radiant Glory, we do not get the passive proc effects anymore from Radiant Glory. So that did get a slight nerf, and at the moment we are not running Radiant Glory. We also have some significant changes to Hammer of Wrath. So Hammer of Wrath used to be an execute for us, but is now no longer a separate button. So during Wings, our Avenging Wrath Judgment automatically is going to turn into Hammer of Wrath, and it's going to basically be an improved version of Judgment. So they've kind of combined, they've taken two buttons and smushed them into one. And we also had some changes with Shield of Vengeance. So Shield of Vengeance is now no longer a standalone button either, and they smushed this one in with Divine Protection. So while this does reduce our defensive flexibility a little, Paladin survivability is actually still pretty strong thanks to, we have Bubble, we got Bop. A lot of the good hero talents in the Templar tree are pretty good for survivability. And we also have some changes to Holy Power Generation. So Holy Power Generation is now a lot more predictable than it used to be. So a lot of random procs that procced Holy Power Generation were removed. So that means it will be a little bit easier to not overcap on your Holy Power Generation. And I guess a long story short with that, what they're trying to do is our Holy Power spenders deal most of their damage up front now instead of relying on random delayed procs. We also have some changes to Blessing of Dusk and Blessing of Dawn. So Blessing of Dusk, damage taken reduced by 10%, increasing as your health decreases. So pretty strong talent there. Again, that will kind of work into our survivability. Then on the other side of the tree, we have our Blessing of Dawn. So while you're above 85% health, 5% of all damage taken by allies within 20 yards is redirected to you. So this is going to kind of act as like a mini AoE Blessing of Sacrifice, redirecting a small portion of that nearby damage to you until your health drops below the 85% threshold. So it is pretty strong, but it is pretty risky and high keys. One thing that does help this though is there's a maximum on the amount of damage you can take, because obviously, right, the tank is going to be taking a ton of damage. The maximum that you can take per second is going to be 5% of your total health per second. Right, so this can't just proc from like a huge effect and then you just instantly drop 50% health. So something to keep in mind there. It's kind of got like a yin and yang effect going on with Blessing of Dusk, but Blessing of Dusk doesn't really kick in until you're lower on health. You don't really get that full effect. In terms of which tree we're running, are we running Herald of Sun or if we're running Templar? We'll talk about builds here in a bit. But right now we are actually running Templar. It's just more consistent. It's more reliable. It's what most people are running pre-patch at the moment. And then Herald of the Sun it's pretty close behind Templar, to be honest, but it's a little bit more RNG dependent. Still absolutely playable if you want to play that, but if you are min-maxing, Templar will be the play. So to give you guys a look at what we're running here at the moment, again, this is just in pre-patch. Okay, and the Whitehead calculator is acting a little bit odd. It's saying I didn't spend enough points to unlock these rows, but I did. So I had to put a point into Sacrifice of the Just and Improved Blessing of Protection. The import should work in game, but it's not working on this calculator. So these two extra nodes here we're not actually taking. So I'll go ahead and fill out the rest of this really quick. So yeah, this is what it should look like. Again, just minus Sacrifice of the Just and Improved Blessing of Protection. This is what your tree should look like. What we're running in pre-patch at the moment. There will be an import in the description of the video. In terms of our stat priority as well, so our stat priority is going to be strength over mastery, haste, then critical strike, and then versatility. You want to try to avoid versatility where you can. So your critical strike is going to be between 35 to 40, haste 30 to 35, and then mastery at 60% or higher. So what that means is your trinkets, you want them to be mastery based. Now for the opener, thankfully the opener is very simple, and the opener is actually pretty much the exact same for Templar, or if you want to run Herald. So your opener is going to be Blade of Justice, into a Judgment, Execution Sentence, Wings, Wake of Ashes, Hammer of Light, into Divine Toll. The only difference between these two is if you are running Herald, with Herald you just replace Hammer of Light with another spender, because you don't have access to Hammer of Light, right? And then after that, you just want to build and spend as you normally would. All right, guys, it's kind of like a small, quick sort of general guide on Ret Paladin at the moment. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Again, the build will be in the link in the description. See you guys in the next one.